Thank you so much, Dr. Naren Suklaji, the Honorable Chair of this session. Let me begin by expressing my deep sense of gratitude to the organizer of this conference, especially to Dr. Gautam Jhaji, Sonijit Reji, Seetal Sharmaji, and their team for organizing such a wonderful academic event. And of course, to JNU for providing such a mesmerizing academic environment for organizing such a mega event of 3 days. Uh, before starting this formal discussion, I would like you to show a few pictures here. You can see the first picture is very formal, very general kind of picture seen from Ramayana. Then you can also see the painting traditionally painted over the canvas depicting Ram, Sita and Hanuman. Then this is beautiful. Performers from Southeast Asia reveal the diverse Ramayana narratives, Ramanic tradition. These three pictures. And obviously, under the ambit of this, we have a picture of performing art, a puppet master making puppet a major source of livelihood in Southeast Asian countries. So when you talk about the main purpose of this paper, the main purpose of this paper is to talk about the literary tradition of Southeast Asia and how it woven into performing art and thus becoming the source of livelihood for millions of population here in the entire Southeast Asian region. The second important aspect of this paper is to look into the changing perception of king and kingship within the center of this literary tradition. And lastly, how literary tradition of ancient North India especially had no pervasive impact on the other geographical regions of Southeast Asia. Last one is very interesting. When we talk about the literature and the development of literature in ancient North India, we have to understand it that this the development of these literature in the northern India had no pervasive impact on the other geographical regions of Southeast Asia. So the relation, however, the relation between the India and Southeast Asia is not new, and the ties between the two date back to the time of Ramayana, which is very evident from the picture also. The text called Ramayana, the Ramayana, is fundamental to the cultural consciousness of the Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, and so on. The text refers to Indonesia as Yavadipa. It is a very Sanskritic word, Yavadipa. The text refers to this region as Yavadipa, and in an instance from the text, we have also we have a reference of Sugriva, the chief of Rama's army, dispatched for a mission to know about the whereabouts of Sita. So this is very clearly reflected in the text also. The Ramayana is in fact a literary treasure created by the population of Southeast Asia. This is very evident. We have numerous examples coming from the different countries where this tradition of Ramanic tradition is very popular, and also the source of livelihood for millions of people here. So we have a puppet show, Japanese puppet shows, and the presentation of these Ramanic characters in the dramas of different regions as well. And thus, an early hint of the deep-rooted link between India and Indonesia is very evident from these kind of performing art. Now we are talking about two different geographical regions, but the theme of this seminar, I would like to thank to the organizer of the seminar, those who have framed this theme, one Indic belt. This is very interesting. You are talking about Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, But what you are calling it one Indic belt. That means you are talking about the culture, a predominant culture of Ramanic tradition and other tradition, and forming the idea that they derived from one Indic belt. So you are not talking about differentiation in terms of culture. This is very interesting. But within the ambit of these literary traditions, what we also need to talk about is the changing perception of king and the kingship. This is the core idea of my presentation here. Apart from shared literary tradition, in this presentation, certain established views about king and his institution of kingship are put to the scrutiny, and I'm trying to discuss the perception, projections, and discourses on kingship found in the two of the Natikas of post-Gupta period, two of the Natikas of Sri Harsadeva, the Priyadarshika and the Ratnavali. When we look at the, what I'm saying is that before the composition of these two Natikas, king was by and large associated with the divine figure. Even if we look at, when we look at the historiography of this theme, you see in 1931, E. Boswell Hopkins came up with an article. This is a very informative article, The Divinity of Kings, published in the Journal of American and Oriental Society in 1931. And Hopkins begins his article by referring king of ancient India as a human god and called them as Manus Deva. You can see here. And called king as Manus Deva. आप धरती पे राजा को क्या मान रहे हो? आप राजा को भगवान मान रहे हो? हॉपकिंस जैसे लेखक ने भी 1931 में आप किंग को मनुष्य देवा करो, आप किंग को कहां से जोड़ रहे हो? आप किंग को डिविनिटी से जोड़ने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. And what is lacking? You are not trying to present king as a normal human being. In another writing also, a significant work of political theory of ancient India, a study of kingship from the earliest time to 8300 by John W. Spellman, was published in 1964. It is one of the foundational books on the study of political thought of ancient India. The author makes kingship as a central theme of his writing, as it was the regular and dominant form of the government in ancient India. He tries to present the notion of kingship in various traditions. However, his understanding differs in various traditions, definitely. I'm not going to talk about the notion of kingship in Buddhist tradition and the Jaina tradition. My main concern is to talk about the Brahminical tradition here. So, in spite of discussing various aspects of kingship, Spellman has devoted 2 entire chapters explaining the divinity of king in Brahminical tradition. So, once again, king has been linked with the divinity. आप उसके व्यक्तिगत जीवन को देखने की कोशिश नहीं कर रहे, और भी आप कई सारे राइटिंग्स देखेंगे, like we have the writing of Professor Kumkum Roy. Professor Kumkum Roy came up with an interesting book, and the title of the book is The Emergence of Monarchy in North India, 8th to the 4th century, although I have a major objection with the title of this book. When you are saying the emergence of monarchy, monarchy कोई helium gas का balloon नहीं था कि it suddenly emerged. It evolved through a process of evolution. What Romila Thapar also talking about it, Thapar says in her book, From Lineage to State, वंश से राज्य तक में थापर भी कहती हैं कि monarchy जो है वो evolve किया है. But again, this is a very minor kind of description. Modern India में भी Judith Brown ने गांधी rise to power कहा. गांधी कोई बैलून नहीं थे helium gas के. His politics evolved a period of time, so definitely not a concern of this paper. So when you talk about Professor Roy's book, he mainly talks about king in context of power relation and social differentiation. So once again, in the recent writings on kingship, king has been presented as something different from a normal human being, where he was largely seen in context of a person responsible for bringing social differentiation in society, and definitely in context of social issues. J.F. Richard edited King and the Authority in South Asia, published in 1998, aims to provide a revolution of monarchy in South Asia, but once again disappointed with the way in which the traditional historians have taken this issue of kingship and king in Southeast Asia. He says, the conventional historiography of kingship in South Asia is flat. Quote from his book, quote, Richard says, the conventional historiography of kingship in South Asia is flat and monotonous, unquote. Some of the writings in the last few decades emphasize on the court culture, no doubt at all. Recent writings on kingship somehow try to move away from the traditional writing and trying to see king from a different angle. But once again, the major emphasis is on court culture, not on the king. So in this list, we can talk about the writing of Daud Ali and one of his wonderful piece of writing entitled Courtly Culture and the Political Life in Early Medieval India, published in 2008, and another beautiful piece of his article, Anxieties of Attachment, the Dynamics of Courts in Medieval India. These two writings focuses on the practice of court and customs within it. It mainly emphasizes over the court culture of Gupta period, that is between 350 to 750 AD, and traces the emergence of court as a place of royal enjoyment, but not on the lifestyle of king, which is the concern of this paper. But when you talk about two of the dramas of post-Gupta period written by Sri Harsha, Pridarsika and Ratnavali, it completely changed our understanding of king and the notion of kingship. Here, King Udyan is presented as engaging himself in the pursuit of Kama. So he engages himself in different kind of enjoyment, in pleasure. So I'm just cutting this long paper short. We have numerous other examples which could also be cited here based on the study of the two dramas, where the traditional norm of dharma and moral were violated by the king. There are occasions when the king is generally depicted as the custodian of canonical law and the preserver of social order, seems to adopt a different line of behavior. So change in king's behavior, I mean to say, moving away from the norms prescribed in the Dharma Shastras. For example, I'm quoting from Pridarsika. While taking a walk in the garden or during festival, his desire for the possession of womanly love exhibits itself in various forms, sometimes in the form of poetry admiring the beauty of woman, passerby, sometimes in the form of informal talk with the companion called Vidushaka. Such behavior is uncalled for in the context of the king if one looks at it according to Dharma Shastras. So the king could also be seen through what is the major concern of this paper is that the king could also be seen through the lens of common everyday people, guided by his inner world, challenging the dominant paradigm of studying the institution of kingship and king from the viewpoint of the Brahminical order in ancient India. Dramas are not only the source of, when I talk about drama, there obviously there should be a question. What is the authenticity of drama and how we are writing history on the basis of drama? So obviously drama is not only the source of entertainment. They make an attempt to illuminate a vital aspect of society in the post-Gupta period that saw a decline in the social norms being interpreted and enforced strictly in accordance with the Dharma Shastras. The king could be seen to deviate from the textual prescription that marks the beginning of a pragmatic shift in the behavior of king, which forms the core argument of this study. The king character underwent a shift from a semi-divine creature to an ordinary human being exhibiting behavior according to his impulses and passions. However, when we look at the tradition of Indonesia, we have reference of a king named Purnavarman, the king of Turumangar dynasty, a Hindu Indianized kingdom located in West Jakarta. According to Togu inscription of 6th century, the Purnavarnam is identified as Vishnu and his kingdom adhering Vaishnavite faith. What I mean to say is that you will see when you talk about Indonesia and when you talk about Purnavarman, what we see is that in the same time, in the post-Gupta period, we have a different kind of literary tradition coming here in North India. But still in Indonesia, when we talk about this particular dynasty, king was identified as a Vishnu. और उसके जितने भी follower हैं उसको वैष्णवाइट मानने लगे. So To sum up this long story, a long discussion, I can say that the literary tradition of ancient North India had no pervasive impact on the other geographical regions of Southeast Asia. Thank you very much.